Over the next couple videos, we're going to get this account screen that you see here up and running. And if you look at this screen, like it's a pretty common looking screen, right? It looks like a typical settings screen, account screen. These are like all over the place in iOS apps. And this type of screen for building the UI for it, like this is where Swift UI really shines because we have an element called form that basically does a lot of this stuff for us. And it's great. So that's what we're going to build over the next couple videos. Let's get going. Okay, so here in Xcode, make sure you click on your account view, right? Remember we set up this just basic skeleton view, which is like our network view, shows account. Let's actually pull up the canvas to see this. And as always, make it small, hit resume, zoom out a little bit to 75%, so it's not ridiculously huge. We are on the iPhone 12 Pro, cool. Okay, so like I was saying, just the basic view we set up before. Well, let's wrap this text in a form and then watch the preview. You can see what we get just by wrapping it in this form element here. Let me actually put the text inside the form, Command X, and then put our navigation title on the form element. Cool. Now, if we look, you can see the beginnings of our form, right? It's just a text. This is account. It's not a text field or anything like that, but you can start to see it taking shape, and we get that format automatically just by being inside this form. And now we're going to format our first section, because again, if you look at the design, you see how our form is broken up into sections with section titles. Well, that's also relatively simple as well. So inside our form, section, we initialize that, and you see it can take a header and then content. So the content is what's going to be inside, which is going to be our text. Our header is going to be a text that says personal info, right? This is going to be our first name, last name, email, and then content, just like we've done with all these before, is now our view builder here with the text. Put the text inside the section. So now you can see what it looks like. Do a Command B, make sure all of our errors are gone. Cool. Resume the preview, should be good. But now you can see again, our form starting to take shape. We have the personal info label, that's our section header. And then we have one element in the section, which is just our text of account. But again, it's taking shape. But we don't want just a text in here. We want a text field. And this is the first time we've been using text fields. So new stuff here. So text field, you initialize that. Just like a lot of stuff, there's different things you can initialize it with. But the main thing I want to point out is the binding to the text. So the first part of this, I'll just hit return here. The first part of this title key is the title, like what you want your text field to say. So this is going to be first name. And then the text, we need a binding to a variable to hold the value that's in the text field, right? Like if I were to type Sean in the text field, I need something to hold, that value of Sean or whatever I type in there. So here we need a binding to that. So we can create a state variable up here. So at state private var first name, and that is of type string. Actually, we won't typecast it. We'll go ahead and just initialize it with an empty string. Use the type inference there so we know first name is a string. So now when I put the binding to this first name variable, now whatever I type in the text field will be the value of my first name, right? They're bound together. So again, for the binding is $, first name. We get that. So hit try again to rebuild our preview here. Now this account text view on the preview will turn into a text field if my preview ever gets going. Try again. Tiny man, these previews. So there you go. Now you see the text field with the first name, right? You see that's the title we gave it. And then the value as we type in, like if I hit play and I start typing SEAN, right? So now the first name variable is going to be whatever I type in there, right? We've created the text field and bound it to a variable. That's how text fields work. We're going to do this a couple more times, but that's the overview. So pulling up the design, we're going to need a last name and an email. So let's build those two text fields as well. And it's going to be the same thing as the first name, last name. So we're going to copy, do paste, paste. So instead of first name, we want last name. And instead of first name, we want just email, right? And now we're bound to first name. That's not what we want, right? We got to create state variables for last name and email. So again, I'm just going to copy the first name, paste, paste. And you see invalid redeclaration. Yep, I know I got to make these different. So last name and then email. And then we'll hit resume on the preview. And then again, now you can see the form coming together. First name, last name, email, and these are all text fields. Now, just like text fields in UIKit, you can customize them. So for our first name and last name, we want auto capitalization, we want maybe autocorrect, or maybe if you don't, turn that off. But in the email, we definitely want to turn that kind of stuff off. So I'm going to show you how to do that on the email text field. And you can do this with modifiers. So I can do .keyboard type. And you see if I hit dot, there's a whole bunch of keyboard types, right? Like if you were entering a phone number, you can show that. Well, for email, there's a special email address keyboard type. So let's make sure we do that. So again, pulling up the proper keyboard. And then we can do auto capitalization equals none. Again, you see sentences, words, all characters. For an email, we want none. We don't want any auto capitalization. Same thing with autocorrect, right? Don't you hate when your email auto corrects, right? So we're going to disable auto correction. Okay, so we have the first part of our form, coming together, pulling up the design. Okay, we need a date of birth and then a save changes button. So before we've been dealing with text fields, now we need a date picker and a button in our form. Well, it's just as we do the text field, it's the same kind of flow here. So I'll scroll up a little bit. We can do date picker and get the initializer here. And I want to do title key, selection, and then displayed components. So this displayed components is the important part because, a date picker can be flexible. You can be picking a time. You can be picking a time and a date. You can be picking just the date. Well, in the case of our birthday, we just want the date, right? Like I don't need to know what time you were born. I just need to know the date. So we'll use that one. So the title key, again, is what we want it to say. So we want this to be birthday. And then the selection is just like we had to do with our text field. We have to keep this value in a variable. So again, at state private var birth date is going to equal just initialize a new date for the start. So now let's set up that binding here. So $birth date. So again, now whatever date we select from our date picker, we're going to store it in this state variable of birth date. And then like I said, displayed components. So I'm going to hit dot, and you can see date, hour and minute, etc. We're just going to do .date because again, we just want to know the day. So hit try again on the preview. And you can see now we have the birthday that says today's date, November 16th, 2020. And if I actually run this, now when I tap on that November 16th, 2020, you can see we get the calendar, and then we can go back and select our birth date. Now you might be noticing like a user experience issue, right? Like, man, if I was born in 1981, I know I'm old, I'd have to go all the way back to like 81, right? So we're going to fix that in the optimization section where we actually come up with some logic as to like what type of date we want to show and dive into that. But again, I don't want to derail this video with that quite yet. We'll come back to that. Let's get our form built. So now that we have our birth date, we just need a button, right? We need that save changes button. So if we change any of this or create this, we can save it. Okay, stop that from running. Now we're just going to put in a normal button that we've used a bunch of times in the course already. So we'll do button. Again, the first closure is whatever you want the button to do. For right now, we're just going to do print save. And then the label is what we want the button to look like. Again, in the multiple trailing closures, the second closure here, we just want a text, right? We're not going to get fancy. The text, we can't get too fancy in a form anyway, but we're going to keep it simple. So save changes, right? And now you can see our button show up in our form on the right. And then when we tap it, for now, it'll print save changes. We'll do more with that in a future video. Again, this one's all about getting the UI set up. And speaking of that, our first section, right, with the email, first name, last name, email, date of birth, button, right? The first section is all set up, nice and neat. The next section, as you can see on the design, is where we start introducing our toggles. So let's do that. So as you can see, I have this section highlighted. I'm not going to copy and paste because I'd have to delete a lot, but I can just create a second section. So section, again, we initialize it with a header and then content. So again, the header is a text. And we're going to call this requests, right? Extra napkins, extra refills. I just thought of some cheesy requests that you might want at a restaurant to demonstrate this. It's not easy coming up with like a sample app that properly demonstrates all the stuff you want to teach and makes sense. That's tough to do. So anyway, like I said, we want this section here to have the header of requests. There you go. You see my little request title. There's nothing in there yet, but we want these toggles. Well, that is just a toggle. And we initialize the toggle, the same way we've been initializing all this other stuff, right? We have to give it a title key, and then it is on. So the title key is, again, what you want the title of the toggle to be. So for our first one, that's going to be extra napkins, and then is on. Again, same concept, right? We need to bind this to, something's got to hold the Boolean here. So we'll do at state private var extra napkins, and that is going to equal false to start. And I like to give these default values because if I just left it, say, hey, this is of type bool, then when I initialize my account view, like I have to initialize these with like initial values anyway. So you might as well just kind of like do that here. Okay, so I'm just going to copy and paste this because we're going to need this again. Instead of extra napkins, it's going to be frequent refills. This is our other option in the toggle that we can do. I'm just kind of getting ahead of myself here. So anyway, the toggle on extra napkins is, you guessed it, $extra napkins. And then let's hit try again on the preview, get this going so we can see this. Cool, there you can see our extra napkins toggle. And let's go ahead and copy and paste this because we're going to basically need another toggle for our frequent refills. So again, instead of extra napkins, frequent refills, and then is not going to be $extra napkins. It's going to be a binding to our frequent refills boolean that we just created up here. So now let me run this on my preview, and you're going to see something that we want to change here. So I'm going to hit play. Extra napkins, cool, and I can toggle these, but it's that default green toggle, which really clashes with our brand primary, right? Pulling up the design, we got that dark green that you see. So we need to add a modifier onto our toggle to give it that dark green color. So if I stop running this, I don't know why I keep stop running that. I can run that. I'm so used to being like a simulator where you got to stop and start it. You can keep that running. Anyway, so on the toggle, we can do .toggle style that you see here. And that toggle style will take in a switch toggle style. And then if I initialize that, you can see it takes in a tint, which is a color. And we have .brand primary, right? Remember we created that extension on color to give us our brand primary color. Cool. Now let's run it again on the preview. See, extra napkins is that dark one, but frequent refills is not, right? You can see the difference there. So what you could do, and this is not what you should do, but you could do copy, paste, look, and then now when I flip these, cool, now they're both dark. Well, if you remember all the way back to when we talked about modifiers, there's certain things that are environment modifiers. So like if I have a bunch of toggles, I don't have to have this like on each one, right? My environment for these toggles is this section. So I can put this toggle style on the section, and what that will do for me is every toggle in that section will get that toggle style, right? So I don't have to stylize each one individually, just put that on the section, and now, again, toggles are still dark green. So now let's run this in the simulator to make sure everything is working good, outside the preview, because the previews can be weird sometimes. Again, I always like to confirm on the simulator. Okay, so here we are. We have our typical table view. Let's tap on account. Cool, we have our account screen, and you can see we got the dark green on our date and our save changes. That's because it's part of our tab bar tint color, and that's why it doesn't show up here on our preview, because that preview is outside the context of our tab bar, because it's like solo, the preview. Well, now that we're within the context of our tab bar, we get those tints. However, we had to change our toggles manually like we did just there. So there's our account screen, the UI, looking good. We have our text fields here, Sean. Oh, we messed this up. See, we forgot something, but that also demonstrates the power of binding, right? So accidental lesson here, you can see my code on the left here, right? All my text fields are bound to first name. We forgot to change that. My mistake, but I think it illustrates, if you weren't sure what binding does, I think now you can kind of see it, how, no matter what I put in the text field, it's bound to this variable, so that's going to be the value, right, for all my text fields. Okay, so let's stop this. Let's fix our mistake here. So we're not bound to first name. We are bound to last name. And we are bound to $email. Okay, let's run that again to make sure that is working. Again, oftentimes mistakes lead to good learning lessons here. So, okay, so account, here we have Sean, Alan, cool. That is working. We can tap on that. Nice, I even misspelled my name. Cool. Anyway, so that is the UI, right? Again, the main takeaways here are just this thing called form. And the nice thing about Form in Swift UI is forms look different on the Apple Watch, on the phone, on a Mac. But if you wrap it in form, you're going to get like the native looking form for whatever platform you're on. So form is like really powerful. And then again, if you want the section headers, you just create the section and then put your items within it. And again, the text field, the date picker, the button, because they're within form, they automatically take the styling that a form expects, right? When you put a text field off by itself, not within a form like on a normal view, it's going to look different. Same thing with the date picker and the button and all that stuff. So it's nice that things inside a form will adopt the proper styling. Okay, that wraps it up for just the basic UI. In the next video, we're going to refactor this into the view model, add some basic text validation, because we want to be careful what the user is like submitting, so they can't just submit like all kinds of like gibberish and cause all kinds of network errors. So that's what we're going to handle in the next video. Let's keep it moving.